Hi, everyone. Welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Technical Oversight Committee. We'll get started hang on a sec. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So, hi, everybody. I'm Julie LaRock. You've joined the quarterly meeting of the Technical Oversight Committee. I guess technically this is a hybrid meeting, but we've got a few of us here in the auditorium and the rest of you are on Zoom. And I understand that for today's meeting, you can't actually see the auditorium, but you'll be able to hear everyone and watch the presentations. And so hopefully that'll be meaningful for you all. I wanted to identify folks who you could just to the I have to hold the button down. Oh, we're dealing with a little bit of a microphone thing here, you guys. I'll try this again. TOC reps, if you could introduce yourself, we'll start with the Corps.
Good morning, Julie. This is Dan Crawford, TOC rep for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Thank you. Donato?
Donato Surratt, Everglades National Park. Good morning.
Ed Smith.
Good morning, Julie. This is Ed Smith, Florida Department of Environmental Protection Officer, Water Policy and Ecosystems Restoration.
Okay, you get another gulp of coffee for all of that. Lori, I think you're here too. Could you please say hello?
Yeah, Julie. Hey, good morning. This is Lori Miller with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge. Good morning.
Good morning,
This is John Barquette.
I'm sure. I'm sorry, Mr. Barquette.
Yeah, I'm serving as a special master. Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. We will get started. We have a couple of presenters who have not introduced themselves, but we'll get to them. Is there anyone else on the phone who wants to introduce themselves, or are you guys good for right now? Okay, seeing and hearing none. We do want to remind folks, if you have dialed in some way to the meeting, please listen only on one of your devices. So you may watch on a computer and listen on a phone, or however you are inclined to do that. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. If you are using a phone, you could press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute your microphone if you're using a phone. And if you're using a computer, there is a raise hand feature in Zoom that you can use. We will take public comment at the end of the meeting today, because I am not seeing, aside from meeting notes, I'm not really seeing anything for us to vote on. We will continue to engage folks here. I can't predict what we're going to do at our next quarterly meeting, but do know that we want you to be able to participate one way or another if we can make that happen. So I'm glad you guys are here. We've got a fairly good crowd. We've got about 40 people here all together today, so thanks a lot. Let's see, we aren't taking any written public comment unless you're here in the auditorium, so I wanted you to be aware of that. Chat, we don't typically use the chat feature here. for these meetings. You should only use that if you're having a technical issue. Otherwise, we're going to call on you and use the raise hand and all of that. I do believe before the end of the meeting, we're going to plan out a little bit about what we're going to do at the next TOC meeting. So I wanted to alert at least our reps for that. And then post it on the webpage. We have a number of items posted on the main webpage, the total phosphorus compliance tables for the refuge through the third quarter of calendar quarter of 21. We have provisional Shark River Slough tracking, and we have Taylor Slough and Coastal Basin tracking all through the third quarter of 21. You will also see on the webpage reports, the third quarter settlement agreement report, the quality assessment report, and its associated data. And then there's a link on the main page to show you the read aheads. We did note this morning a bit of a technical glitch. So some of you may be well aware that when documents are converted to PDF format, sometimes they get a little skewed. So the slides are correct technically, but we'll have to go back and regenerate the PDFs and put them back out there for you. But I did want to let you know what you see on the screen is correct, and the data in what's posted on the web is correct, but it just got a little goofed in its transcription. I do want to point out on the link for read ahead, you've also got the draft notes from the last meeting as well as the presentation. So we should be good to get going. First of all, I want to ask the reps, do you guys have any agenda modifications for today?
This is Donato.
Julie, this is Dan. Nothing from me.
This is Donato. Nothing from me.
This is Ed
And
Smith.
this is Lori. Nothing from.
Ed Smith, nothing for me. Thank you.
You are welcome. But I tell you, I can't read your guys' lips. That's a little, a little interesting. All right, great. So we'll get going. The first item for us to discuss is the meeting summary from the last meeting. I hope you guys have all had a chance to look through that. Do we have any edits we need to make or a motion to approve the meeting notes?
This is Donato. I motion to approve the meeting notes.
This is Ed Smith. I second.
Do we have any objections from anybody?
No objections from the core.
And Lori, I assume you're good.
I'm sorry, Julie. I got it. Yes, no objection. Sorry, I was having some mute issues.
And I'm over here realizing that my new cell phone has all kinds of sound adjustments I didn't know. So, all right, thank you. So we're good with the meeting notes. Let's move on to the third quarter settlement agreement report, which is going to be presented this morning by Chelsea Q.
Good morning, Mr. Paquette, TC reps. Thank you for having me to present the third quarter of 2021 settlement agreement report. Third quarter marks the end of water year 2021, by which we assessed the annual compliance for Shark River Slough and Taylor Slough Coast Basins inflows to Everglades National Park. But for Shark River Slough, the results are provisional because we still have provisional flow data that will be finalized by April. So we'll report the final results next meeting. For Taylor Slough and coastal basins, the results are final. For the refuge, we have monthly results for July, August, and September 2021. So from the summary table at the top for the refuge, the results are for every single month. Let me get the pointer. Okay, for July, August, and September 2021, the monthly geometric mean TP concentrations were consistent below the respective long-term levels. The marsh stage increased, and we could not collect 14 samples in these months. So in the middle portion for Shark River Slough, we have the provisional compliance results for water year 2021 shown in this September row. So the annual fluid mean TP concentration was 8.2 parts per billion, 0.6 parts per billion higher than the long-term limit. The percent of sampling events greater than 10 parts per billion was 50% higher than the guideline. In the bottom portion for Taylor Slough and coastal basins, we have the final results for water year 2021 shown in the last row. So the annual fluid mean TP concentration was 5.6 parts per billion, about half of the long-term limit of 11 parts per billion. And the percent of sampling events greater than 10 parts per billion was 2%. And it's caused by a single sampling event due to a tropical storm Eta. And this slide shows the refuge monthly compliance status in the past 3 years. So here the stepwise line with purple background is for the monthly marsh stage. And the red line is for the long-term levels, the standard to meet, and it's inverse to stage. For this quarter, while the marsh stage was increasing, long-term levels were decreasing. So those dots are for the monthly geometric mean of samples we collect in the marsh and need to stay below the red line. So the 3-year average TP geometric mean was 6.9 parts per billion, 3 parts per billion below the average of a long-term level. So stretching the red line, the standards to a 0 line, we can see how far the observed data was above or below the 0 line. So this red dot indicates a single excursion in September 2020. But in the next 12 months, the observed geo mean was below the long-term level, and we didn't have another excursion. So September 2021, the last blue diamond, is the 13 months after passing this 12-month window, and it resets the compliance clock. So we will talk about these 3 months, the top 3 months in our regular reporting. Then the bottom portion is for 3-month outlook with preliminary data. So marsh stages continue to increase, and our geometric mean TP concentrations continue to below the long-term level. Moving over to Shark River Slough, we have provisional compliance results for water year 2021 shown in this bottom row. So the annual total flow was 1.7 million acre feet, which resulted in the long-term limit, 7.6 parts per billion. Our flow weighted mean TP concentration was 8.2 parts per billion and 0.6 parts per billion higher than the long-term limit. For historical compliance status, this last hedged bar represents the newly added water year 2021. And to its left, these two bars are for the two most recent years. So for water year 2020, we met the limit. And for water year 2019, we had a small exceedance. So in the next few slides, I'll show the daily flow at Shark River Slough inflow structures in the past 3 years. So compared to previous years, this year, the flow was much higher, almost doubled the flow in the water year 2020. So usually we wait till the end of the year, calculate the compliance limit once we have the annual total flow. But this year, we already knew the limit in first 3.5 months because flow already surpassed 1 million acre feet, which got us the 7.6 parts per billion limit. And of the 1.7 million acre feet total flow, 2/3 came from S12s, mainly in the first 2 quarters, shown in these light blue shaded areas. And 1/3 came from S33 and S33N, mainly after January, so shown in these dark blue and red shaded areas. And this slide shows flows into West Shark River Slough at S12A, B, C, D from the top to the bottom. So because WCA3A had high stage in October and November 2020, Army Corps of Engineers implemented emergency deviation, which allowed S12A and B stayed open till January 2021, passing their October 1st closure deadline. So S12AB then reopened in August. And S12CD passed massive flow in the first 2 quarters. And this slide shows flow into the L29 canal east of S333. And in this second canal, S33 and S33N passed 95% of the inflow. So in this third panel for flows pumped by S356, only the yellow shaded area was counted towards compliance calculation because it traces water coming from water conservation areas and flowing into the park. And this slide stacks all inflows and outflows between S333 and S334. So we add a red line to represent flow at S334. So the flow under this red line was not counted towards compliance calculation because S334 flow went to South Dade. And this slide shows the bi-week flows in these blue bars and TP concentrations in cyan dots. So based on this bi-weekly data, we calculated the annual flow weighted mean TP concentration. So the first 5 months had high flow and low TP concentrations. Then TP concentrations increased in the early summer, then peaked at about same level of summer 2020. But the difference is summer 2020 had near zero flow. And summer 2021 had high and relatively high and continuous flow. So the zero flow multiplied 30 parts per billion concentration is still zero. So these, the summer 2021, summer 2020 high concentrations did not affect the annual flow weighted mean. But for summer 2021, this high flow and continuous flow, along with high concentrations, substantially affected the annual flow weighted mean. Here we add a string of diamonds to track 12-month flow weighted mean concentration ending every month. Those blue diamonds started in April 2020, reflecting the TOC's approval of compliance method 1.5, which replaced method 1 in these white diamonds. And the last blue diamonds represent the water year 2021 results we're reporting. So this slides include WCA 3 stage, Shuck River Slough inflow, and TP flow with mean concentrations for water year 2020 and water year 2021. So at the bottom, these sky blue shaded areas for Shuck River Slough inflow. And at the top, the two solid lines are for stages. So the royal blue line is for 3A stage, and the red line is for S33 headwater. Then those orange dots are for the weekly flow with mean TP concentrations. And COP operations began in September 2020, right before the water year started. Then note these two royal blue lines. The solid line is for 3 stage, and the dashed line is for COP operation regulation line. So with these two lines, COP operations separate water year 2021 into two distinct zones. Zone A in the first 5 months, and Zone B for the latter 7 months. So in Zone A, 3A stage was a high, which allowed maximum practical releases. And we send massive flow to Shuck River Slough in these sky blue shaded area. Then in Zone B, Pamimetrial flow formula controlled the releases and called for continuous flow even when stage was low. So we send flow continuously throughout the year without any day of gaps. So also in Zone B, S33 headwater in this red line was under 9.2 feet most of the time. So as S33 headwater decreased and TP concentrations increased and peaked at about same level of water year 2020, summer 2020. So because here you see the red line, S33 headwater had the same nadir of 7 feet. And although the flow were different in these two periods, as I said earlier, summer 2020 had low to zero flow, and summer 2021 had high and continuous flow. So therefore, based on these observations, so similar stages resulted in similar concentrations, even when flow conditions were different. with the provisional data, water year 2021 flow with mean concentration was 8.2 parts per billion, which put us 0.6 parts per billion higher than the limit. However, compared to water year 2020, that met compliance with TP concentration 9.3 parts per billion. Water year 2021 had a better water quality, 1.1 parts per billion lower. And the 8.2 parts per billion is closer to the long-term goal of 8 parts per billion stated in the consent decree. So under COP operations, water year 2021 provided massive continuous flow to Shark River Slough. So while the resulting stages and ecological conditions are not within the scope of Appendix A compliance reporting, other forums have reported positively on these conditions. So moving over to Taylor Slough and coastal basins, we have the final results for water year 2021 shown in the last row. So the total flow was 400,000 acre feet, and the annual flow with the mean TP concentration was 5.6 parts per billion, about a half of the limit of 11 parts per billion. So for historical compliance status, the observed level was well below the long-term limit shown on this red line, fixed at 11 parts per billion. So this slide shows daily flow in the past 3 years. So compared to previous years, this year we sent lots of water to Taylor Slough and coastal basins, mainly via S332D, the purple area at the bottom, and S18C at the top yellow area. And 2/3 of the flow occurred in the fourth quarter of 2020 of the 400,000 acre feet of total flow. So for flows at individual structures, S18C had a high flow in November 2020. The peak was as high as 1,800 cubic feet per second. Then the flow reduced quickly, then stopped in the dry season and resumed in June. For the flow pumped by S332D, the operation was consistently, except a 1 month gap in the summer. And relative to S18C flow, G737, S328 always had smaller flows. And this slide shows the fate of water pumped by S332D into the C111 detention area. So here shows shown in the purple area. Here, the red line is for flow passed by S332DX1 to the north detention area, and it's not counted towards compliance calculation. And this neon green line is for flow at S328, which carry the surface water further into the Taylor Slough. This slide shows event flow in blue bars and TP concentrations in cyan dots. So also this is the underlying data that goes into the annual flow with mean concentration calculation. So all of the TP concentrations were below 10 parts per billion, except one single event in November 2020 associated with Tropical Storm Eta. And this was this cost that 2% of TP concentration greater than 10 parts per billion. Here we add a string of diamonds to track the 12-month flow-weight mean TP concentrations ending in every month. Then here again, the blue diamonds started in April 2020 because TOC approved compliance method 3, which replaced method 1 in these white diamonds. And the last blue diamonds is the 5.6 parts per billion number we're reporting for water year 2021. I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you, Chelsea. Do any of the reps have comments or questions for Chelsea?
Good morning, this is Donato. Thanks, Chelsea. That was a great presentation. Can we go back to slide 13 or 14? I forget.
Sure. Okay, this is slide 13.
So, yeah, let's go to the next slide, 14.
13, this is 14, which
Yeah,
one?
that works. So you pointed out here that the concentrations for total phosphorus peaked out at around 30 parts per billion here in both this year and the previous year. And they both had these exceptionally low stages at the headwater of S333, dropping down to 7 foot. When we've seen this in the past, and you know, historically we would have had the structure closed coming into this period when the stages have dropped this low, and then we would open them right after we got a big rain event. And what we would normally see as a result of that dynamic is a large spike in phosphorus concentrations going up to 50, 60, and even 87 parts per billion. Just going back to 2017, I believe. So I think the point that I'm making is I appreciate the continued flow that the Tamiami Trail flow formula has introduced here, and that continuous flow seems like it may be helping us ameliorate those exceptionally high spikes that we've seen in the past. Additionally, I like the fact that we have seen this huge volume of water coming in during the period where you're showing this huge spike in 2021 of flow. And associated with that was our exceptionally low concentrations of phosphorus. So I guess my point is that I'm appreciating what we're getting flow-wise coming to Everglades National Park and the dynamic that's being promoted through the Tamiami Trail flow formula. And I think if we continue this path, I think we're going to continue to see pretty decent quality of water coming through the system. As you pointed out, we are at 8.2, which is close to the target of 8 parts per billion. And the conditions look better than they looked in 2020 when we did not have that continuous flow through the whole period. We did have a small gap in that continuous flow, so I'm liking the continuous flow dynamic because it seems like it helps us ameliorate those high spikes. Over.
Okay, thank you, Donato. Next up, we have a comment from Lori.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I think, Donato, what I'm hearing you say is that without the continued flow, excuse me, in 2021, from on a historical basis, is that we probably would have had a lot higher spikes.
Right, because historically we would have.
No.
No, that's what I'm seeing in the data. Historically, what we have done was allow those gates to come to a close. And then it seemed like sediments or nutrients or whatever are building up in front of that gate. And then all of a sudden we would raise it up really rapidly. And then we would get this huge flush of nutrients going through, and we would see a huge spike in the concentrations, double what we're seeing at the peak here. So that I was just pointing that out. Right. The continuous flow operations seem like they may be helping. Obviously, we need some more time to add to this data record to get a clear picture of that, but it seems like preliminarily we're seeing some benefits.
All right, so thank you, COP. So Chelsea, and again, thank you so much. I know gathering this data takes a lot of work. So we really do appreciate all of your compliance work. So thank you again. Hey, and just one real quick question out of curiosity. I think on slide 2 and maybe even on 5, you mentioned that you were not able to get 14 samples from the refuge. Did I miss it, or did you tell us why? What did it have something to do with stages, or?
Okay, because
In August and September, sorry.
okay, thank you for the question. So every time when the sampling crew went to the field, they measure the water depth. So I think this time it's contribute to the flock layer. So if the flock layer is was much higher, so the water depth is less than 10 centimeters, so they couldn't collect the sample because that's the sampling criteria.
Okay, so it had to do with the flock layer. I know we were at or above, very near the regulation schedule this year. So I would have hoped that we didn't have that, but I do understand we did go below the regulation schedule during the summer. So I'm sorry, earlier in the season. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori and Chelsea. Ed Smith, you're next.
Thank you, Chelsea. Great presentation. I appreciate it. You did a fantastic job of putting all the information together. This question is actually for Donato. I was curious, you said that conditions had improved. Is that conditions within Everglades National Park? And can you expound upon that for us? Is that specifically related to stages, or are you seeing ecological conditions improve?
I was specifically focusing on the water quality conditions in the canal and at the structures. We're still in the process of evaluating downstream response to these dynamics. But again, my whole point was the continued flow through the structure may have provided us a little benefit from seeing the substantially high peaks in the concentrations. But we will have more to come further with respect to ecosystem responses downstream. Over. Thanks for the question, Ed. I hope I'm close to helping to answer.
Yep, no, that's good. Thanks. And I look forward to seeing your evaluation. That'll be great. Thank you.
Dan, comments or questions?
Hey, Julie, this is Dan Crawford at the Corps. Chelsea, again, I want to complete the circle of applause. Really appreciate the very thorough, comprehensive presentation. I just want to reiterate a couple of the points that you made is from the Corps of Engineers. We have received a lot of positive feedback, as you indicated, on the implementation of COP and the benefits of the continuous flows into Shark River Slough, and particularly Northeast Shark River Slough throughout the year. Also want to just highlight, I appreciate your acknowledgement of the emergency deviation that the Corps of Engineers did have to implement due to the extreme high water late in the year associated with Tropical Storm Eta in November of 2020. And as you indicated, you know, the COP, we did start operations under COP in first day of September in 2020, or under our new water control plan for COP. But the Tamiami Trail flow formula didn't actually kick in until late February, March of 2021. And so that intervening period, tail end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, we were actually pushing as much water out of Conservation Area 3A as we could, because we were above regulation schedule. And so I appreciate you highlighting the emergency deviation that allowed us to send a very nominal additional amount of water out of S12 Alpha and S12 Bravo, but most of that water, out of S12 Charlie, S12 Delta, and S333 would have continued to be discharged out of 3A just due to our elevated water levels. So I just want to appreciate the thoroughness with which you did your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And I want to be the only one that doesn't say, great job, Chelsea. Great job. Thank you. Really appreciate you doing these briefings. I don't have any other comments to add, but I do have a little planning piece that I'd like to go ahead and interject here if I could, folks.
Julie, we had a hand raised just now. I think it was Jed.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Jed, did you speak?
Sure. I just wanted to sneak in a little comment here at the end of this discussion. Yes, I do. I just do want to confirm the ecological conditions downstream in Northeast Shark Slough have been favorable. We've had several consecutive years of multi-annual hydro periods that are being experienced on a widespread basis downstream of the S333 structure. And it looks like we're, approaching something on the order of 100 square miles of area that has these very long hydro periods. These long hydro periods do facilitate the processing of the nutrients that are received by the marsh and are consistent with the natural system targets for that area where we want a long hydro period marsh. That allows, that is fed through by continuous flow upstream and continuously is supportive of downstream conditions in Florida Bay and southern portions of Shark Slough. So I just wanted to share that bit of positive information with the team today. Over.
Thanks a lot, Jed. I will echo something Chelsea mentioned during her presentation. I too have heard a number of very positive comments about what's going on and what's going into the park. So hopefully that will all continue in a good way. We will, toward the end of today's meeting, schedule our next meeting. I'm anticipating we will have final data to show that there was a real exceedance in the park or excursion. And so I would just like to kind of ask the reps and your staff to start thinking about things we ought to talk about at the next meeting. And, I brought this dog-eared copy of the 3 questions here today. So I just want to remind you guys of what those are so that we can be thinking about what we need to do for the next meeting. And by all means, if somebody wants to volunteer to look into something in particular, I would appreciate that as well. So assuming we will still show an exceedance when we get the final data, I believe our principals have asked us to consider 3 questions specifically. So the first question is always the difficulty one, is have we sufficiently looked at all of the information so that we have a better understanding what might have caused the exceedance? And I think that's what we need to talk about at the next meeting, is what are those things and do we understand them? The second is, have we determined that there's substantial evidence that the exceedance is due to error or extraordinary natural phenomena? And gosh, it would be nice if we could land there at the next meeting as well. And of course, the third question is, if it's not considered to be an error or extraordinary natural phenomenon, what have we considered for additional remedies that might need to be taken? And you can reference all this stuff in the consent decree. So I'm just wondering if you guys would be, if we would all be prepared to discuss these at the next meeting. It sounds like maybe Donato, you guys may want to talk about the impacts in the park, positive or negative. I'm kind of just guessing. Obviously, we would be able to look at whether or not there was data error, but I'm wondering if we could prepare for that for the next meeting, and if I have any volunteers today on things that you might look into and present. And Mr. Barquette, I'm sorry, you have your hands raised, so let's hear from Mr. Barquette.
No, I just wanted to point out that I was about to say something similar to what you've just gone through the last couple of minutes. So I appreciate you reading my mind.
Mind reading is one of my specialties, sir.
Very good.
Anybody want to volunteer for anything for the next meeting? Otherwise, I may have somebody call you and ask you. So, fess up now, guys.
Well, this is Donato. We're in our evaluation process. However, this is kind of out of the time loop like we had been doing in the past. We can adjust it and try to accommodate, but I thought we normally got a final exceedance announcement and then we went away and did our evaluations and made sure we were all on the same page and come back with whatever recommendations we did in that next meeting. But if we're pushing it forward at a higher pace, we can try to accommodate.
I'm just kind of throwing that out there because we already know what the process is. And if I will share with the larger group here, I know we are all overwhelmed with work and have too many things to do. So certainly if it's something that we're not ready for at the next meeting, that's fine too. Okay, not hearing or seeing a lot of other comment. We'll move that along. I guess I would ask the other reps if you feel there's any relevant material that could be ready at the next meeting that you'd like to present. We would welcome that. I'll leave it at that for the moment. But you're right, Donato. Sometimes we have presented the official in the April-May timeframe and then moved on to do these materials in the following meeting. So I can respect that. Thanks. So based on Donato's comments, are you all more interested in pitching all that conversation to the following meeting, which would probably be in like July or August? What about you?
Julie, can you repeat that? You were kind of muffled. Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. I don't think I'm consistently holding the button down over here. Some years, many years, we present the official results, and then at the following quarterly meeting, we consider the questions and present whatever technical material we have. I'm just offering the option today that we would potentially do both of those at the next meeting in May, or some combination of that. So I'm looking for your guys' feedback on process here. What about you? Well, I see Dan's unmuted. What you got, Dan?
Julie, yeah, this is Dan Crawford. I was just going to say, I think I echo Donato's point. I think we can start taking a look at the data, because I don't think the conclusions or the outcomes are going to meaningfully change in the next 3 months. So I think we might have some preliminary presentations to talk through collectively as a group, at that next May quarterly meeting but I tend to agree with echo what Donato said. I think it'll probably take us a little bit longer to get to the bottom line conclusions and evaluations and coordination with our agency principals, et cetera. So I think, we can certainly look to maybe tie up the loose ends on this evaluation a little more expeditiously than was done in 2019 for that exceedance for Shark River Slough. But I think we can start by looking at a lot of the similar data analyses that were done for the 2019 exceedance, and hopefully try to accelerate the timeline. Over.
Okay, that is a little confusing. How about Ed? Let me hear your comments.
Hey, Julie, thank you. I think, from DEP's perspective, certainly we would like the additional time to look at things, but, if need be, we can see what we can do to be ready for the next meeting. I do like Dan's approach of, hey, let's go ahead and start the conversation, but it may take us a little bit more time than we anticipate right now. Then this next meeting, we may need a little bit more time, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Does that make you feel better, Donato?
I wasn't whining. I'm just playing. No, I feel it's good. Everything sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so if it's all right with you too, Lori, it sounds like what we'll do is we will confirm or not the exceedance at the next meeting and maybe get partway there in our discussions and hopefully tidy it up at the following meeting. I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody. So, so we'll proceed along those lines.
Hey, Julie.
Hey there, ma'am.
Okay. Hey, yes, I totally agree, and we'll certainly go along with the group on that timeline. I think it's going to be really important for us to start engaging senior leadership, mainly because it takes so long. I think they meet every quarter. So I think we probably, each of our agencies needs to go ahead and start that conversation. And I think maybe that will help get things moving a little bit faster. So I think the quicker we engage our senior leaders, I think the faster we can tidy this up.
Okay, that seems pretty suitable. Is everybody also going to have it on their radar screen to engage your principals, please? I'm going to pretend I can see your heads nodding up and down. Please do that if you would.
Hey, Julie, this is Ed Smith, DEP again. To that point, we have the next principals meeting tentatively scheduled for March. So perhaps at that time we can make sure that they're fully engaged and having the conversations in preparation for the next TOC meeting when we do our preliminary presentations.
Okay, great. That sounds very helpful. I appreciate knowing that, Ed. And I would ask the other reps, please note Ed said the next meeting is in March. So if you guys could funnel some information or suggestions or thoughts up to your principals between now and March, that would be really great.
Hey, Julie, this is Ed. Just to add a little more detail, it's March 23rd is when it's tentatively scheduled. So kind of give people a target to shoot for.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, why don't we move on to our next presenter, Savannah Royals. Welcome to the TOC fold. Savannah is going to present on our project to Sub-South 356 Echo Water Quality Monitoring. So Savannah, take it away.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you barely.
Okay, barely.
That's better. That was better. Thank you.
All right. Alrighty, I'm gonna try to share my screen real fast. Oh. Do you have the presentation? It's not letting me share.
Dealer, maybe you could do the slide flipping.
All right, thank you. All right, hi, my name is Savannah Royals. I'm an environmental engineer here for the Army Corps. Today I'm doing a short presentation on the compliance monitoring plan for the Sub-South contract 2A S356 East Pump Station and the S334 East Spillway. Next slide, please. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with the SEP project, so I'm just going to do kind of a quick overview of the overall project. The Central Everglades Planning Project was authorized in WRDA 2016 with the purpose to improve the quantity, quality, timing, and distribution of the water flows to the northern estuaries, the Central Everglades, the Everglades National Park, and Florida Bay. And due to the magnitude of the SEP project, it is broken down into 4 different phases, which is SEP EAA, SEP North, SEP South, and the SEP New Water. This area we're focusing on is going to be SEP South. Next slide, please. SEP South is broken up into several different contracts. Contract 1 being the L67 culverts and the L67C levee degraded in the ag ditch. What we're talking about today is going to be the construction of the S356 East Pump Station and the S334 gated spillway. And then the contract following this one will be demolishing the existing S356. And then so on and so forth. It would be the construction will be 3A, 3B, which will be the constructions of 333 North Spillway, 355 West Spillway, and so on. Next slide, please. The contract 2A, we're going to be building a S356 East Pump Station with 1,000 CFS capacity. It includes 4 diesel pumps and then 2 electric pumps, and that adds a 250 CFS redundancy. It also includes the L29 levee realignment as well. We will be also building the S334 East Spillway. It has for 1,200 CFS capacity, and it's approximately 28 feet across the L29 canal. We are expecting to award this contract in FY23 and estimating it to take over 4 years to about 4 years to complete. All right, next slide, please. Here's kind of a closer view of where the S356 East Pump Station and the S334 structure will be. The existing S356 and S354 monitoring platform is kind of on the left of the screen. This is where we will be monitoring during construction as the pump station and the spillway will be constructed, and also we'll be constructing 2 new monitoring platforms, which are pointed out here on this diagram as well. Once it's just constructed, the existing platform will be demolished and we'll be using the 2 new platforms. Next slide, please. So here's from the compliance monitoring plan for the SERPA permit that we submitted. So the frequency will be the biweekly recorded flow, and we'll be testing, the parameters will be for total nitrogen and total phosphorus for both. And then for the, and then dissolved oxygen, pH, specific conductance, temperature. They will be collected by the district on the same day as the Shark River Slough stations for the consent decree Appendix A compliance calculation. And as I stated earlier, the existing S356 and S334 stations will continue being sampled during construction. With that, I will take questions. I know that was a pretty quick presentation.
Hey, Savannah, this is Donato. Thank you. Good presentation. Can you go back to either one of those maps with the overlay of the new structure on the marsh? Yeah, can you tell me how much area, I forgot, how much area of impact is that to the marsh? Hello?
Hey, Donato, this is Ken. It's going to be about 6 acres.
6 acres. All right. Thank you. I was struggling trying to remember that number. Thank you.
Okay, Dan, you have a comment or a question?
Thank you, Savannah. This is Dan Crawford with the Corps of Engineers. I just wanted to kind of reiterate for the Technical Oversight Committee, the goal of the Corps bringing this presentation today is just to, in the interest of transparency, you know, we know that as Savannah indicated, the Central Everglades Planning Project is going to be implemented through multiple construction contracts over the course of the next decade. We've already been working on active construction for about the last 3 years. So we just wanted to make sure that as we contemplate a future inflow location modification to Shark River Slough, that we're we're bringing that information to the TOC at the earliest opportunity. As Savannah indicated, where the Corps of Engineers is at intermediate design phase at this point, but we're about a year away from any kind of construction contract award. So there's ample time to make adjustments and to consider any technical recommendations that may come through the Technical Oversight Committee. So we're not looking for any voting actions today, but we just wanted to make sure that we're being transparent as we move forward with the construction. And the Corps of Engineers and our partners at South Florida Water Management District are both mutually invested in ensuring transparency as we continue to move forward with the SEP construction. So we'll try to keep bringing these items to the TOC as appropriate as we continue with the implementation of SEP. So again, thank you, Savannah.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comments or questions for Savannah for today? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so thanks a lot, Savannah. Okay, now we're going to move on to public comment, if there is any.
Julie, this is Donato. Can I ask a question, kind of a general question? I don't really know who to aim it to before we get the public comment. The question is about the 333 data. I know since November, at the end of November, we haven't been collecting it. Do we have an update on that status for re-engaging collection for those?
You know what? I'm very sorry. I do not have a status for you. I'm not seeing any up and down head nods here from my cohorts in the auditorium. I do know that we engaged a contractor to get a price quote to make the repairs, but I unfortunately do not have the latest on that. I know originally we were mired in the whole deal with supply issues and other things. John is walking to a microphone. He may have some more updated information. Hold on.
Yes, Julie. I did talk with our field crews who are taking care of that, our managers there, and I mean, it's imminent. I don't know if they're sampling this week, but the work is very near being completed. It's just a matter of making sure we have all the materials that are needed to finalize that. So I think by the end of January, it's almost certain that we'll be collecting samples at 333 again.
Thanks for that feedback, John. Just to put it on everybody's table, that kind of means there is a topic we'll have to discuss. I'm not sure the timing of that, but we're talking about at least 2 months of missing data for 333 and how to deal with that. We do have the 333 North, and I think it might be maybe a sub-team discussion we might need to have, but just putting it on the radar. Over.
Okay, thanks, Donato. Okay, now we're going to get to public comment. Give me 1 second to bring up the correct screen. Hang on. Okay, our first comment is from Newton Cook. Mr. Cook, please go ahead.
Yes, this is Newton. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we sure can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first time didn't work. This has been a very interesting meeting because what it has shown is that we had a very big rain event, a monster rain event, but south of the lake, and the system worked. And the phosphorus levels stayed within where we wanted them to stay. And that's a tremendous accomplishment by all the agencies who are here today. And I just think that we should recognize the fact that despite record rainfall south of the lake, and that rainfall had to be moved quick, the system worked. And that's a very good thing. The second thing we learned was that with all that rainfall, and the deviation of opening the S12s and keeping that water moving south basically all year instead of just a few months, that also worked. And the system, as far as the phosphorus content, stayed within the range it needs to stay in. So we learned that we can let that water move out of WCA3. And as Mr. Bergeron is off to say, we don't need to keep drowning the Central Everglades. So two very positive things. And it's very much appreciated because a lot of work has gone into accomplishing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Our next commenter is Yogesh.
Hello, can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentations today. Chelsea and Savannah, both presentations were very thorough and informative. So thanks a lot. It is indeed very encouraging to see continued flow across Miami and phosphorus concentrations still remaining relatively low, though we do see exceedance of long-term limit for the federal water year 2021. And I'm looking forward for the detailed technical analysis and discussion in upcoming meetings. The one thing that I observed was the phosphorus concentrations between July and September of 2021 seemed slightly elevated at all the structures on Miami, including S12s, especially S12. So I was just wondering what is the reason? I mean, typically from July to September, concentrations are around 0.5 to 7 ppb, but this time they were about 10 ppb. So what is the reason behind that, and has that contributed to the exceedance? And thank you so much. Looking forward for the discussions in next meetings.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public or those of you that are considered attendees by Zoom? I see someone with the last four digits of 5372. If you could please identify yourself.
Yes, this is Drew Martin with the Sierra Club Waxahachie Group.
Hi, Drew. Go ahead and comment, please.
Yes, I really appreciated the presentation today, and I really was happy to hear Donato's comments on improvement in the Everglades National Park with the year-round flows. I also appreciated Newton Cook's comments as a member of the public. I have a question. I don't know if you can answer questions or not, but maybe Donato could answer this, or maybe in the next meeting. But has it improved the salinity conditions in Florida Bay? This improved water flow, and has there been any noted improvement in the seagrasses in Florida Bay? That's my questions and public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from those of you that are attending, members of the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or microphones getting unmuted, so I think we are good. The next order of business for today, this is always the tough one. If Mr. Barquette and the TOC reps, if you guys could please consult your calendars if you haven't already. We do need to schedule our next meeting. We're looking at May 3rd or May 10th.
This is John Barquette. May 3rd in the morning or May 10th in the morning would work for me.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, this is Donato. Both work for me.
This is Lori. May 3rd is better, but I can make May 10th work if we have to.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Both dates work for the Corps of Engineers, so I'm fine deferring to Lori's availability and her preference.
Okay, I think we should have our final data in time for either one of those dates. So I'm all right with May 3rd if you guys want to do that. Okay. We kind of have some idea of things that need to be on the agenda for the next meeting. I would ask you guys, if you have specific agenda items or presentations, please let us know that well in advance of the meeting. We'll still plan on being here in the auditorium, and whatever's going on in May, we'll figure out where everybody's going to be. I think that's the safest we can do for right now. Other than that, I don't think we have anything else for today. If you guys would have a great rest of your week, that would be a wonderful thing, and we will close the meeting. So thank you very much.